Hello, hello. Today we are happily starting our learning series um, for members, and I'm super excited. This has been an absolute labor of love, and the goal is we are all going to understand our transits better. So, say you can't make a live, say that like it's just impossible, and I'm reading charts or I'm going over a new moon or a full moon or an opposition, whatever the astrological event may be, I want you to have some semblance of the structure, the bones of what we look at. It's never going to be the same as a professional astrologer who's learned techniques, and I have no fear that by teaching you, the only thing it's going to do is it's going to empower you. I don't have any, my whole platform, as far as the trauma informed, as far as the evolution, and learning how to like break old cycles, that whole part for me is built on the predication that I empower you and give you enough tools in your own toolbox that you no longer need me. So believe me when I say I am chomping at the bit to give you some really good structural bones of reading your own chart, but not just reading your own chart, because we see that all over the place, but helping you to understand when an astrological event hits you, what are the layers, because astrology is all about layers. Just sitting with my daughter, I made some visual tools for us today and just explaining like how many layers there are to the house, regardless of the planets, regardless of the planets talking to another planet. There's so many layers. And she was just like, wow, like as much as I listened to you and I've been in all the lives for 4 years and everything else, like this other understanding was new to her. And so I hope that I'm bringing you, for your time, for your membership, which I appreciate so, so much. There aren't words. I hope that I'm bringing you something that either you didn't have or a new way of explaining it that just clicks for you. Today, we're going to go over house basics and the subjects and the way things may express, any astrological event may express in the first house. I really want to go deep, but I'm not. I'm gonna go give you extra details, but we're gonna try to keep this each series to be the first night, Friday night, we'll be going over 2 houses. This is the only time that it'll be 2 houses and an extra subject, because we're gonna do the basics. And then tomorrow, Saturday, will be discussion time, or how to like any questions and maybe a little leftover from the night before if we don't get to everything about house 2, because we're including basics tonight. So that is the housekeeping. I'm going to try to keep this as fluent as possible. Absolutely put your questions in if you are able to join me live tonight. And thank you. I see all the beautiful people that are in here now. But if absolutely put your questions in, even if you can't stay until I can answer them. But I want to keep this video as flowing and coherent as possible, so it'll be evergreen for people to come back to. So if there's an astrological event and you're thinking, oh, that's happening in this house and there's a lot going on around my career or my relationship or moving, you'll be able to come back, as long as you have membership, to reference that house. And when we go over the planet series, which will be a different series, that's when we will get into what if you have this planet in this house. There's enough, trust me, to cover in the houses without going over what each planet looks like in each house. Do I have any questions now that I've kind of given housekeeping for the video of the people that are live? Hello, Juan and Zoe and Adva. Okay, so let's get into, as we go into the houses, which is what you all chose, let's get into the very, very basics of it. The first thing that I want to say is that a very interesting piece that really helped it click for me when I was learning house systems to the degree that I needed to be able to practice astrology was the idea that the astrologers of, you know, the back in Babylonia, right, in 500 BC, 540, they didn't have telescopes, they didn't have software, they didn't have a lot of the tools that we have today. They didn't have the math to calculate Placidus, right? You know, hence whole sign, which is the oldest, as we can find in text, has been interpreted house system that was used. But also astrology was used as a form of divination. It was a belief in the gods that created the heavens. It was absolutely an observed repeated cycles as certain planets took to the sky in different positions, and how that played out within a person's life, within external circumstances that they would all experience in the collective, right? And as these repeated events would take place, would happen, you know, that is when the data is collected. Astrology is really collected data over time again, and that is how we rely on the planets. That's how we can forecast. That's how we can understand who you are as a person, because over hundreds of years, over centuries, the collected data just, you know, formed that phrase that we all know and love, which is astrology does not lie. It can flex a little bit. It can, you know, we co-create with it. We have our own free will with it. And sometimes it can express just a tiny bit different than we thought it might, right? And when we have Uranus, like we do in this full moon today, that's the wild card, right? So we know it's going to be a surprise. We know it's going to shake things up. We know it's meant to align. But there can be some variables in how that will exactly express for each person, right? Because it's Uranus. But that collected data again and again was also combined with the idea that this was divination. And so while they collected the data, while they understood that certain planets expressed in different ways and had different effects on different people, they saw houses as actually temples. And while we call house rulers, what they really thought of back then was that was the host, right? So the first house was hosted by Aries, was hosted by Mars. And so they, because it was divination, because they believed in gods and goddesses and temples, you know, there was a lot of mythology still tied into astrology, and there still is part of that today, right? But they looked at the houses as temples, 12 temples for the 12 signs, for the 12 dwellings. So that is where houses kind of came from. And I think when I first heard that, things really, really clicked for me. Like, oh, it's hosting, it flavors, right? We've heard it described in all different ways, and maybe there's a different way that somebody else has described it that you've heard another astrologer and that clicked for you. But for me, that clicked, the idea that, you know, it was considered a favor to have a good chart. It was it was the parents' wish that when the child came into this world, in that horizon line, and that ascendant, that first house, that kind of you know, talks about the vitality and of course, back in a time when there wasn't modern medicine and life expectancy was less, they would truly look at that to see what could they expect for the vitality, the health of their children. It was the best way to know. And so the idea that these goddesses and gods that could give you favor or not give you favor, which I don't believe in. I believe every chart has its juicy parts. It has its superhero in it. If they're all, every chart is wonderful in its own way, right? But the idea that it was hosted by goddesses and gods, that it was hosted by these figures. Each house had its own temple, its own host. And that is where the house system started. That is where, that was the concept of houses. It was really temples, and they weren't rulers, they were hosts. So I'm going to throw some visual aids up. And when I'm doing that, please feel free to screenshot. If you are a member, if you're taking notes, or if you want to, I can try to maybe, and let me know if there's an interest in this. But I believe that we have very interesting software and abilities now that I might be able to take this video and transcribe it and take out all my ums and ahs, and then put that along with the visual aids and put it into a little PDF for, we can do that for the Astros and the Gratitudes and the nerd members. Let me know though if you're interested in that. And that is our audience today. So we may have a very small bunch of people in the live. This is for Astros, Gratitudes, and nerd members. And then what we're going to do is in about a week, I will release it to the rest of the members. So they'll have it too, but you all will be able to interact if you're able to catch me today or tomorrow. And of course, everyone's able to ask questions. So the first, let's see, let's do this one. Here's the first visual I have for you all. Let's see. Okay, it's not moving. So as you can see, the first house is influenced by not only Mars, but Aries. So when we think of first house subjects, they are going to be reflective and influenced by both the god Aries, right? And also the planet of Mars. Now, it's also said that Mercury has its joy in the first house. So, but that's another level, and that is a really, really ancient theory or practice. So we're not going to get into, so if anybody wants to ask me, like, yes, do I know what the old influences are? Yes, but I think that for learning purposes, I wanted to make things as simple and colorful and easy as possible. And it can get confusing if you're looking at the subjects to throw in the really, really old ancient divinatory extra influences to each house. So that being said, of course, the first house is a fire house. It is influenced by Mars and Aries. The second house is an earth house. It is influenced by Venus and Taurus. The third house is an air house. It is influenced by Mercury and Gemini. The fourth house is a water house, and it is influenced by the moon and Cancer. The fifth house is a fire house again, and it is influenced by the sun and Leo. Sixth house, earth sign again, influenced by Mercury and by Virgo. Seventh house is influenced is an air house again and is influenced by Venus and Libra. And to be clear, I do think that the Venus that we experience in the sign of Taurus and in the second house is more the morning star of Venus. It is a tangible expression, an active expression of Venus. And I believe that this Venus that is expressed in Libra, and again, not everyone believes that. This is my belief and my experience with the two expressions of Venus within these, is that this is the evening star, and it is expressive rather than active. And you know, we'll get more into that when we go through the signs and the planets. But that is the difference. Just the same way that the third house having Mercury, that's where we're collecting information, and this is where we're refining the information. Okay, then we get to the 8th house, which is flavored by both the ancient ruler of Mars, because again, they did not have equipment, they did not have telescopes, and they did not have the ability to see Pluto. Pluto was not discovered until the 1920s, and so we have both Mars and Pluto influencing the 8th house, and as does Scorpio. The 9th house is, and that is water again, is the third expression of fire. It is influenced by Jupiter, and it's influenced by Sagittarius. The 10th house is the last expression of Saturn, and it's the last expression of Earth. It is influenced by Saturn, and kind of what I would call Daddy Saturn, and it is influenced by Capricorn. The 11th house, which is the last expression of air, is influenced by both Saturn, but I refer to this as the zaddy of Saturn. It learns the rules to break them, right? And Uranus, which again did not come into play until later when they had the equipment to see as far as where Uranus was situated, because it could not be seen by the naked eye. So the ancient is Saturn, and the additional modern ruler is Uranus. I don't think we have to use one or the other. And of course, we have Aquarius influencing the 11th house, and then our last 12th house is the last expression of water. It is flavored by its ancient ruler Jupiter, and also the modern ruler of Neptune, as well as Pisces. And again, if you want to take a second to screenshot that, that can be a really helpful tool when you're trying to remember rulerships of houses, the natural rulership of houses, the extra layers or flavors or hosting of planets and gods and goddesses or signs, when we're trying to figure out how something may play out in a certain house. Okay? Oop, not that one yet. Okay, so let's close that one out. And the other thing I want to talk about is when we look at a chart, most of the time we are looking at a heliocentric chart, which means the one planet, right, that we don't see in a chart is Earth. That is because Earth is in the middle. Oh, that is much, much too big. Let's get that smaller so you can see the whole thing. There we go. So many moving parts. Okay. So here is our ascendant. Here is the difference between the 12th house and the first house. Now, truthfully, there should be a little light here and there should be a little light there, because we have sunrise here. So this is kind of like that light that starts to creep in before the sun fully rises in the first house, right? But our rising sign is based on the moment the sun is rising on the easternmost horizon at that moment. So if your sun, right, is in the 12th house, you were probably born near sunrise time, depending how close to the equator you are. But this is called so if your sun is in the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, or sixth houses, that is considered an evening chart. This is going to come up later in more of our learning series, but if you have a night chart, you are said to have, and I really like deconstructing kind of the masculine, feminine, malefic, benefic thing that was so emphasized back in ancient astrology. However, there's still significance to, if you have an evening chart, you're going to have a stronger benefic and a stronger malefic. We'll go over that when we go over planets. But just remember that if you have a night chart, you actually, even the first house, that is considered an evening chart. The day chart is considered your sun in 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, or 7. Now, the sun technically is setting here. So somebody can be born here. While it depends on the time of year, it could still be a little dark out. But this is a completely different vibe than someone born in the 10th, or where it's noon, if you're born closer to noon, especially if you are on the east coast of the United States. It's going to depend. Now, this is going to flip in a different hemisphere, but you are going to have more extroverted qualities if your sun is in 11, 10, 9, and even to some degree 8, than you will here. And that is often when I ask somebody, when we don't have a time, we just want to get a roundabout sense of, is this person have a night chart or a day chart? I will start to ask, and some of you experience this in private sessions, I will start to ask, do you think that they're shy, or do you think that they are more extroverted? And how extroverted are they? Do they kind of come alive in a small group, or are they painfully shy no matter what? Do they make friends wherever they go? Do they feel like everybody's a friend? They just haven't met yet. These are all things that can help us tell where the sun may live in the chart. So in a heliocentric chart, where we see kind of the cat's cradle, blue, green, red lines in the middle, that is also kind of Earth. That is why Earth is not one of the planets in the chart. So again, the sun rises on the easternmost horizon here at the time of your birth. It doesn't have to be where you are. But on the easternmost horizon of the Earth, that is where the sun rises. That is how your ascendant is decided. It's very likely that you have an evening chart if you have your sun in these houses, especially 2, 3, 4, and 5. And this is from sunrise to sunset. If your sun is in any of those houses. do we have any questions from people in the chat so far? Hi, Maricela. I'm just waiting on questions. We have another visual. And again, this will be up on the channel and evergreen for you to refer to whenever you need to. Okay, I am going to move on. So just a recap. The chart is where the sun rises and sets. The rising sign is literally where the sun is rising on the easternmost horizon. In ancient astrology, where it was almost a divinatory tool, because there was such belief in God and goddesses, kind of controlling whether you had a favorable chart or not. They believed that the houses were actually temples, that each of those gods and goddesses hosted. Therefore, the influence. Just the same way, if I came into your house, I would see the influence of your style, your preferences, your taste, your nostalgia, the people you love. All of that influence would be felt, right? We would be able to know a little bit about somebody. If you've ever walked into somebody's house that you've never been in, it's one of the first things we do. We are influenced by what we see and feel in their home base. And so that is how houses kind of came about. I'm next going to get kind of technical. So I just want to make sure everybody's with me and you don't have any questions before we move on. Just let me know that you're good in the chat. Looks like the 3rd and 4th houses are on the day part of the diagram. Okay, so let's go back to that diagram. This is night, and this is day, and this would be houses 3 and 4. I will add the house numbers tonight and pull up this diagram again tomorrow. But houses 3 and 4 are the night. Yeah. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. This is just an overlay to this. Does that make more sense now if I put them side by side? Oh, wrong one. Okay, you can't see the mouse at all? Okay. Well, then I guess I'm going to have to start making visuals that kind of light up. But this is the same. I will tomorrow put numbers in the horizon day night. So on the it's the same. If where the sun is coming up, that's the 12th house. Underneath it is the first house. I was trying to make this simpler and not using the second computer because it stops all the time and depends on lots of other factors. So I thought I would just keep everything on this one laptop, but now I realize that means you can't. In the other one, you could see the mouse, in this one, you can't. So well noted. Tomorrow I will use the other computer for the graphics. Does that make sense if I put them next to each other? It's the same diagram that's separating the houses. That's an overlay to the night and day. Thank you. Okay, that makes better sense. Okay, great. So, yes. If you're born in the evening, your sun is most likely at the bottom of the chart, especially the more in the middle of the night. If you think of the MC as noon, you can think of the IC as midnight. Again, that's going to differ just a little bit depending if you're born really close to the North Pole or South Pole, or okay, just reading the chats, right? That can differ a little bit, but the basics are you're looking at noon and midnight. Okay, this might be new for some of you, and some of you might know it like the back of your hand. If one has a night chart, that does that mean they connect more with their moon sign? It's not so much that you connect, and we're going to talk about that when we go through the planets and we're not going to go through each of the planets through the houses through the in the house learning series, because there's so much to cover just within covering houses, but we will absolutely go over that. The night and day chart will come up a lot, both when we're doing the planet series, the aspect series, and the sign series. Because the moon and the sun represent such different things, it's not like whether you like Pepsi or Coke, whether you connect to one more or the other. But that's a great question. Okay, so moving on to more house basics. We're going to go over the house labels, and also tomorrow I'm going to save, we're going to go over decans. While I believe that there is the potential of a degree at 0, and I believe that there is the full expression or maturity of a degree at like 29, and there's maybe like halfway between the two at 15, and then I personally don't subscribe to like if your sun is at 13 degrees it means you're fated to one thing or another. I think that there's different levels of expression of the degrees. So there's that, okay? However, I do really think decans count, and we're going to go over that, and that is between 0 and 9 degrees is the first decan or decan, however you want to say it, of an expression. And then there is 10 to 19, and then there is 20 to 29 degrees. You will also find this in tarot. We're going to go over that tomorrow because I think that works better after we start talking about the subjects. And it really is such a discussion that it should be as interactive as possible. So hopefully the people that are here tonight will be able to join tomorrow as well, because that really can give you another layer. Right now, we're going to go into the angles, or the kind of importance. All houses are important. All charts have their superhero moments, and sometimes things that look more challenging bring extraordinary people, right? So I don't believe in like good chart, bad chart. And I don't believe in good house, bad house. However, there are some things that show up in our lives very, very clearly. And they're kind of the basics, right? And then the other things are the accessories of who we are, how we live. And so that is also mapped out in the houses. And the same way that if I'm telling you to like go over your chart, or there's a transit and we want to know how it's going to affect you, we're going to look at first the sun, then the moon, then Mercury, then Mars, then Venus, then Jupiter, then Saturn, right? And then Uranus, Neptune, and then finally Pluto. That's kind of the order of priority that I'm going to know how somebody's going to either show up in their life if I'm reading a natal chart, or how much a transit might affect you, depending on, well, like, is this a moon to, moon and sun transit? Because that's going to affect you maybe a little stronger than if it's two outer planets affecting you. Okay? So in the same way, we kind of have an order to the houses. And I'm going to share that graphic because I don't think I could explain it without. I had asked a while back something similar. Night signs seem influenced by the moon more. Yeah. There's I don't want to digress too much. I want to keep this like really clear so people aren't so this is all easier to take in, especially because I'm about to get really technical. I promise we will cover that. But we're going to cover that when we're talking about planets. Okay? All right. So here are kind of the assignments for the houses. I'm curious if anyone no sorries. This is why it's interactive, and this is why it's the gratitude nerd and astros. This is my thank you for those levels of membership. And by the way, while I have gratitude and nerds level, so next week will be chart reading, like whatever your question is. So once a month, nerds and gratitude level members will get their own live stream, and it'll be, you can look ahead and ask me a question, but we can do chart reads, and especially because you guys are nerds and gratitudes, and I really appreciate that level of commitment from you. Also, if you wanted to bring me a loved one's chart, We can kind of look at those as well. Okay, so once a month you'll have that. All right. Has anyone ever seen the houses broken up this way? Hi, Michael. Yes, happy full moon. Okay, Maricela, you have seen the houses broken up this way. Okay, great. So where we have our ascendant, which is the cusp of the first house. Now, I use Placidus and because they did not have the math. Again, astrology was somewhat divinatory. Ancient astrology with the gods and the goddesses and hence houses being temples that they hosted. But they didn't have, that's why we didn't have the discovery of the outer planets, because they didn't have the equipment, and they quite frankly didn't have the math to calculate Placidus. So I'm using Placidus. I feel it's the most accurate. I feel it gives the most layers. And absolutely houses that are split up always kind of make sense in experience. It's what I find the most accurate, and I'm just a person, I'm an evolutionary astrologer, and I'm a person who believes in progress, and to ignore and dismiss the progress that we've made in the ability to clock that ascendant and then clock the house calculation on that, because we have the math to create Placidus, I want to honor that progress. So with our angular house, it starts with our ascendant. Right? And this is a big deal. This house, that is that first house. This is your vitality. It's not the whole of who you are, but it's you coming into, it's the house that represents you and kind of only you. And we'll get into that. I'm going to break down the subjects of the first house, and then also how astrological events may express in the first house, because those kind of are two different things. There's nuance to it. So we have our angular houses as one. It is the ascendant house, right? The first house. We also have an angular house in the fourth house, which is adjacent RIC, which is another major line or major angle. Then the descendant is adjacent our seventh house. That's our third angular house. And then we have our last final angular house as the 10th house, which is adjacent our MC. So if you remember ascendant, descendant, IC, MC, that'll be really easy to remember the houses that follow those lines. So following your ascendant is the first, following your IC is the fourth, following your descendant is the seventh, and following your MC is the 10th. Those are your angular houses. These are said and thought to be very, very important houses. They hold you, other, your past, and your home life, and your ancestors, and the most private part of you, and then the most public part of you. You are not your past, and then your legacy. Like, this is past, this is forward, this is legacy, this is your, even it can continue after you're gone, right? That is your reputation. This is where you can hide. This is where you can't hide. This is where we focus on us, and this is where we focus on other. I mean, MCs and DJs are kind of similar. I get it. I get it. Whatever, Lord, Juan, help me. The word has escaped my brain. Whatever, is it pneumatic systems you have to use to remember? I feel like pneumatic is wrong. You know what I'm trying to say. Whatever prompts you have to use to remember any of this is fine with me. Does everybody get the angular houses? Does everybody get why they could be deemed the priority houses to see if you have planets in those? I also want you to notice that we have an angular house in each element. One in fire, one in water, one in air, and one in earth. Oh, you can't hear me? Oh, I said, is the word pneumatic for remember? I don't think it's that. But you know, what is that word for when you're trying to have a little trick to remember a name or something else? Let's see if this has any juice on it first before I plug it in. How is that? Is the sound any better? Let me put this. I have my little fuzzy microphone now. Okay. So is this related to the angles on the houses, or is that something else? This is these are the angles. The angles of the houses are your, that's why those are called angular houses. They are, the angles are your ascendant, descendant, IC, and MC. So that's exactly right, Ava. Hello, Teresa. I figure as we go on, it's probably going to be more convenient for others to join. And if you all need me to start at 7, I can do that. If it's too inconvenient, because I'm already doing the afternoon the next day for the people who are in Europe or that nighttime doesn't work for them. So let me know. Okay. So those angular houses are you, other, past and future, and also like the environment that shapes you and your potential that you can achieve. So there's polarities within the angular houses, but they are the meat and potatoes. Hello, lovely Heidi. It's all right. This is going to be there forever. Don't worry. No one's late tonight. You can go back and check this. This will be evergreen. So those angular houses, when we have planets in those angular houses, they tell us a lot about someone. And when you're having An astrological event in those angular houses, 1, 4, 7, or 10, they can show up in a big way. They can show up kind of in a tangible way to us. When we have an event in the first house, that's about us. It can be about our vitality or even our appearance. You know, there can be something there that marks us, but often that first house is about going inside of ourselves. It sometimes is an impact, right? That really stays within us. It affects us. It changes us. Something happening in that 7th house could be changing about our partnerships, the other people in our lives, and our contractual, right? Those are things we have to deal with other people. It'll show up and affect us through the reflection of others in one way or another. When an astrological event happens in our 4th house, talk about close to home. That is home. It affects us in a way, it can affect us deeply because it hits that early environment or it hits our now environment. But the one we care about the most. And when an event happens in our 10th house, it's very, very public. It can change our trajectory. It can encourage our potential, or it can expose us if we are not attempting to achieve that potential in a way that aligns with our higher self. It's very interesting because the full moon with Uranus is hitting the MC and the 10th house, especially Uranus is fully in that 10th house for the president-elect currently. So whatever happens, we'll all find out. However this full moon expresses in his chart, we will all find out. It will be public, especially when it's a public figure. Public is relative. So these are considered, the main star of the show houses. Does anybody have any questions about these angular houses? I should have made myself a cup of tea. And make sure if you want to screenshot this, any questions about the angular houses? I know there's a delay, so if you're watching, I appreciate your patience while I give grace to the delay so people who are in the chat can ask their questions. No questions? Okay, let's get into the succeeding houses. Also, one more note, you probably already figured this out, but the angular houses are all cardinal houses. It's where things start. Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn. Okay. They're all cardinal houses. I'm just going to flash so these are our angular houses and they are our cardinal signs. Okay. Succeedant houses, where those angles, the angular houses, right? The cardinals, the starts, the meat and potatoes of our lives. Then we have the succeedant houses. And these are houses that follow, that, succeed from the angular houses, and they stabilize and develop the initiatives, the subjects of the angular houses. They stabilize and develop the subjects of and initiatives, because it's cardinal, of the angular houses. This is our second house. These are our fixed signs. So this is the second house, represented by Taurus in an earth sign. This is our fifth house, represented by Leo in a fire sign. It's our eighth house, represented by Scorpio in a water sign. And it's our 11th house, represented by Aquarius in the air signs. Our fixed signs that want it, and that's why it's the fixed signs, and it's the stabilizing houses. It's about building and sustaining resources in the second, building creativity, sustaining creativity. Building intimacy, sustaining intimacy, trust, and building and sustaining community that's kind of born out of our reputation, our potential. Okay. These are the houses that kind of focus on refining and solidifying not just tangible resources, but kind of our soul's resources. What satiates your soul? The long-term growth, the long-term evolution of our lives, of our souls, of our resources. Does anyone have any questions? About the succeedant houses? I'm just going to make sure. Okay, and again, thank you for members who are watching this in replay, for the grace to let the chat get their questions in, since there is always a delay, as you all know. Okay, no questions on the succeedant houses. Does everybody kind of get what I'm saying? Am I explaining in a way that is easier for you guys to pick up? Okay. The cadent houses. Cadent means to like fall away. So what's interesting about the cadent houses is really the angular houses are the star of the show, as I said. They are the ham in the sandwich. And so the cadent houses that are prior to the angular houses, where the succeedant houses are after, the cadent houses actually are supporting. They are preparation, and they are transitional. They are mutable. Does this make sense to everybody when you think about it that way? So we know in the house influences, right? We have, you know, fire and Aries and fire and Leo and fire and Sagittarius. But we also have another layer to that house, which is the fact that it's angular and it's cardinal. That third house is cadent. It's preparation, it's learning, it's transitional, it's air, it's mercurial, and it's mutable. So we start to add the layers. Okay, great. We probably have the most adaptability in the cadent houses because they're mutable, right? So we have the first cadent house, again, represented by Mercury and represented by Gemini. And it is exactly transitional. It is building, and it is preparatory. That is where we find elementary school and middle school and high school. It's where we find siblings and people who feel like siblings to us, our neighbor friends, our early childhood friends, cousins. People who feel like they are our peers, and we had that when we were younger, when we were developing. And it changes. It's adaptable. There's a little bit of reflection of looking at other. It's Gemini. This helps to really understand the themes of each of these houses. Again, so when you're having your own astrological events, if you can't make it to a live, or you're not having a session with me, and for whatever reason, and you have an astrological event in that third house, you can now think to yourself, okay, it's being hosted by Mercury and Gemini, and mutable energy, transitional, preparatory energy. Planets, when they're in cadent houses, can sometimes be a little bit more subtle in their influence. Not always, because it could be the sun or the moon. It can feel very busy. Your mind, if you have your sun or your moon in the third house, it might feel very busy, very transitional, very preparatory. It could be harder to feel like you can nail down emotions. You might try to think your emotions. You might look, because it represents reflection. You might look to others to help you to reflect or understand. Your thoughts, your expression, your voice, those kinds of things. It's all influenced. These are learning. If you have your sun or your moon in those third houses, you could just be a student of life perpetually. Okay. Sometimes cadent houses, so that third house is really supporting the fourth. The sixth house represented by Virgo and also Mercury, right? That's where we have self-refinement, self-evolution. That's supporting the seventh. I feel like the sixth house is also underrated, because when we self-refine, we bring in better relationships that we find in the seventh. That sixth house supports the seventh. If I'm looking at synastry and you have a lot of planets in their sixth house, right? You may feel supportive to them. And sometimes that's good and sometimes it's bad. We need to see synastry going the other way to tie intimacy and tie soul connections, so that you're not just, because sixth house is where we see tools. It's preparatory. It's transitional. These are also where we have our internal thoughts, our internal health. Right? Our education, both secondary and higher learning. Our beliefs, our mental and spiritual life. That ninth house is represented by Sagittarius. It's hosted by Jupiter, and it is also mutable, and it is also transitional. It's where we find our belief systems. It's where we find expansion, which is hopefully always moving. Sometimes the ninth house being cadent, because it seems so important, our belief systems and our higher education and all that, confuses people. It seems like one of these things is not like the other. Feels like a big house to be cadent. but it's supporting, it's preparatory. That 10th house. How we expand our mind, how we expand our beliefs, how we expand our understanding of the world, how we expand through other cultures is absolutely going to, support our reputation, our legacy, our potential, our public persona. And hopefully you're always adding to that. You're always adding to your expansion resume. So mutable makes lots of sense, right? It's similar to the cardinal starts the season. Right. So if cardinal is starting, when we can feel the seasons start to change, when we have that first day of smelling fall air, but summer's not quite over, that's cadent. When it's still fall, but now it's not sweaters, now it's not cardigans, beginning of fall, we're just in long sleeves, right? And then we kind of have this transformation. Transition from cardigans to full-on hoodies and sweaters right before we move into the dead of winter. It's the transitional phase. But the seasons are a great way to explain it. We have that last 12th cadent house, which is the house represented by both Neptune and Jupiter. It's expansion of our spiritual, expansion of our higher self, expansion of our mental stability, really. It is mutable because that is always changing, right? Our mental status is absolutely, as we learn, as we regulate our nervous system, as we heal, that's always changing as well. And that 12th house, of course, represents spiritually. And in astrology, it can represent that last life, right? Before we begin a new one. It's the portal before we enter this lifetime. And I don't know that you can get more transitional than that. So what we did in the last lifetime would prep for this lifetime, where we enter this lifetime. These houses can also represent where, again, when we're talking about the 12th house, this is where the soul kind of reflects the larger themes of life. This is the inner reflection before we hit those angular houses that express who we are, who we dance with in life, where we came from and where we're going. These houses ideally would encourage your growth through learning and introspection, and also service. We can find service in all of these houses. The service of communication in the 3rd, the service of service in the 6th. The service of sharing beliefs and educating. It's also where we find teaching in the 9th. And spiritual service in the 12th. Do we have any questions about the house assignments as far as angular, cadent, succedent? Is anyone lost? And again, those are your mutable influences. So randomly picking the 6th house, we have mutable, we have Virgo, we have Mercury. Now you know why I didn't want to talk about the other ancient astrology influence, like Mars has its joy in the 6th, which just makes no sense to me because Mars in the 6th is usually a shitty transit. I don't find anything joyful about it. Tomorrow we'll go over the decans because I feel like for basics and for layers, this is enough before we just get into, I think we're going to do 1st house, and I'll save 2nd house and decans and more conversations and questions tomorrow. Okay. So when we are doing let's see if I can stretch this in a way that we're really focused on that 1st house. Nope, that's not the right thing. There we go. Okay, so the 1st house. 1st house in astrology is absolutely attached to that rising and ascendant, and it represents our somewhat of our sense of self. It represents some of our personality traits, maybe the things that people notice the most. It's not the deeper part of ourselves, but it does represent our vitality, to some degree our energy levels. Somebody who might have the sun or Mars in the house, or Aries there, whether there's any planets in there, could be somebody who's more comfortable being busy and kind of moving around, multitasking, those kind of things. Health and vitality. You've seen decans with zodiac signs and non-houses. Yeah, that we're gonna go over that tomorrow because it adds another layer to what's in a house. It adds another layer. But when we get to the discussion part, we're gonna have somebody like pick a planet that's in a house, and we're going to go over all the layers of how that planet expresses through the house assignments, through what side of the horizon it's on, through the influences, the hosts, the temples, and then through the decans in that degree. So that you can start adding the layers together. Okay. The core keywords of that 1st house is going to be, again, identity, self-expression, independence. This is where it's the me. Focus on yourself. Put your oxygen mask on first. Your appearance, your physical body. Hello, Shauna. And also new beginnings, because this is where we start a new life. And again, vitality, health. This is where we want to ask, how do you express your individuality? How do you develop through the first house? Your courage, your independence, your self-reliance. Again, Aries themes, right? Mars themes. The evolutionary focus on that first house is going to be learning to navigate life authentically, asserting individuality, right? That is where we kind of shed social construct and really lean into authenticity. Again, Aries. And so the whole point of this series, right, is so that like when these different layers are so ingrained in your memory and in your head, it's going to be easier to think, oh my God, I have a full moon or a new moon or an opposition or something going on in this, in this house. So I just have to remember we have Aries themes of authenticity and independence and courage. These are things that you're going to find in that first house. And evolutionary wise, again, that's developing authenticity, developing. That doesn't mean you come into the life with it. It's how you learn to navigate all of those subjects. In a karmic aspect, we are shedding from that cadent 12th house of our past lives to come into this new life with this set of prerogatives, with this set of, I hate using the word lessons because it feels like, bad things will happen to us because we have to learn a lesson. It's not. It's what we're really interested in. It's like, when you get to senior year and you get to kind of pick the subjects and you get to kind of pick more because you've done a lot of your prerequisites. So you get to pick more. It's the things you're interested in, the things that you think that will help you. And that's kind of like moving from the 12th house to the first house. The first house is kind of like the reflection of what we did the last time or the time before. And that influence, that preparatory subjects of that 12th house moving into the first. What do we want to navigate about ourselves in this lifetime? That's kind of the karmic expression of the first. It's our soul's emergence. It's our physical being's emergence into this world, coming out of that ascendant, that rising sign. It's initiative because it's Mars. It's navigating initiative, right? Because it's the authenticity, the navigation, the movement. And then the balance in that is also navigating all of that while still honoring partnerships and contractual things that we find in the opposite 7th house. Now, your own rising sign, your own host of your rising sign is also obviously going to be an influence besides the cardinal energy of the fact that it's an angular house, besides the Martian and Aries influences and all of those subjects. Even like when you have progressions in the first house, can almost feel like a new moon. A progression in the first house can feel like a change to how we present ourselves, how we navigate, how we come into authenticity. It just feels like a bigger progression of that, right? A progressed sun going into the first house. It just is a shift in our identity and our purpose. When Venus and the sun just transit the first house in a normal transit, regardless of whether that's our sun sign or not, that can feel like a glow up, or that can feel like a reinvention. You know, and the shadow aspects of that first house can be overemphasis of ourselves, hyper independence from trauma, where we are so independent because we don't trust other people to have our backs. That's a very, very Aries theme. If you have Aries placements and it feels like you advocate for others, but like having people stay, or being rejected or not defended when you were younger, right? Those are all Aries themes. So if you have hyper independence, that can be some first house trauma that shows up. That can be a shadow expression, or just something that shows up as that is one of the subjects you really wanted to explore in this lifetime. It's very interesting if you look around at people that you know in your life, or you have very strong placements in that first house. You'll find somebody often that can have some hyper independence or does have a strong sense of self. And we can often see like huge changes in their life by the transits to those first house if they have a lot of strong first house placements. You can also look at this in a spiritual way as the entry into reincarnation, that first house. And it's again meant to balance the seventh. And if you want to write these down, if you do have a lot of first house placements, the main subjects are going to be identity, authenticity, movement, navigation of self, independence, how we navigate courage. We have our appearance, part of our vitality is in there. It's interesting because health is really the sixth house. But if you have a Jupiter or a Mars transit to the first house, you could gain weight inexplicitly. And that's not so much health related as appearance related. There could be, it still ties to health a little bit, but it's how it shows up on us very physically. Sometimes we have health things that we can't see. You know, when you get a rash, you can see that. But you could have other health issues that don't have any external markers. Any questions about the first house? Anybody want to add anything that they feel like the first house is that I either didn't touch on, or you look at it or have a different word for it that you would think that you think is helpful for everyone? Honoring your individuality is one of the healing journeys of the first house. Feeling free to express your true self is one of the healing journeys of the first house. Also, I'm just going to say right now, if you have your sun or your moon in the first house, so that we'll go over that more in detail when we go over the planets. I just want to, I don't know, bust the idea that if you have your sun or your moon in your first house, that that's somebody who might be self-centered. They might be a little bit hyper independent, but it is very, very likely that you spent the whole last lifetime only taking care of others, and that this lifetime is meant for you to put your oxygen mask on first and celebrate yourself and not give away your power, and get really comfortable with being authentic, whether it makes you likable or not, whether it shows up well in the reflection of someone else or not. Okay. I think it's been almost 2 hours, and I will take a couple of questions, and we will do the second house and decans tomorrow. Again, I'm going to thank the replay viewers for grace when I'm giving time, because there's a delay for anyone that is in the chat right now to ask any questions. Thank you again all for being members. I really, really appreciate you. Again, I will put this, this will instantly be up on the channel, and then I will release it to the evolutionary membership people that are not in this chat. And I will be live tomorrow at noon to go over both the second house, and we're going to go over decans just lightly. And then if anybody wants to, we can actually do some exercises and going over the different layers that lie within each of the houses in your individual charts. And of course, ask any questions you may have. We had the full moon a couple of hours ago, about 4 hours ago. And we can also talk about that a little bit tomorrow, and I will just kind of cut that out of the video at a later time. If things are going on and you guys want to talk, I want to tell you that last weekend we did the full moon as our members only live, and one of our members, I looked at their chart for them. I want to say that was probably Saturday, and today I got a lovely message from them that the thing that I said would happen happened. It was a good thing, and that's to show you also that sometimes the surprises don't always have to be bad with Uranus, and sometimes the full moon that looks kind of like, you know, fuckery for the collective is not fuckery for everyone on an individual level. And whenever, you know, if something comes to fruition that I've said, especially through astrology, please don't hesitate to let me know. I love those kind of confirmations. My Virgo rising and imposter syndrome lives for the confirmation that I have guided or forecasted in a way that was supportive to you. It's what I'm here for. Okay, everyone, let me click this off. I love you. Now you love you. I will see all you beautiful people tomorrow. And I hope the rest of your evening is wonderful and that this full moon has been gentle and it's only bringing you good surprises. I think that some of us will even get good surprises in the news in the next couple of days. It won't feel good for everybody probably, but it's going to be very interesting to see how it plays out collectively. And I'm here. You guys all have my email. And I will talk to you all soon. Bye.